Hello everyone, my name is Lara Lane Amabisha, and our topic is the United Nations and contemporary global governance. Although many internationalists like Betham and Kant imagine the possibility of a global government, nothing of the sort exists today. There is no one organization that various states are accountable to. Moreover, no organization can militarily compel a state to obey predetermined global rules. There is, however, some regularity in the general behavior of states. For example, they more or less follow global navigation routes and, more often than not, respect each other's territorial boundaries. Moreover, when they do not, like when Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, it becomes a cause for global concern and debate. The fact that states in an international order continue to adhere to certain global norms means that there is a semblance of a world despite the lack of a single world government. So, global governance refers to the various intersecting processes that create this order. So, og sa Tagalog pa, pandaigdigang pamamahala means to manage issues that cut across national borders, whether it is a war, a pandemic, a financial crisis, climate change, or a geo-economic dispute. Og sa Bisaya, lain-laing proseso nga gihimo niini para mahanay. There are many sources of global governance. States sign treaties and form organizations in the process legislating public international law or international rules that govern interactions between states as opposed to, say, private companies. International non-government organizations or NGOs, though not having a formal state power, can lobby individual states to behave in a certain way. For example, an international animal protection NGO can pressure governments to pass animal cruelty laws. Powerful transnational corporations can likewise have tremendous effects on global labor laws, environmental legislation, trade policy, etc. Even ideas such as the need for global democracy or the clamor for good governance can influence the ways in international actors behave. What is an international organization? When scholars refer to groups like the UN or institutions like the IMF and the World Bank, they usually call them international organizations or IOs. Although international NGOs are sometimes considered as IOs, the term is commonly used to refer to international intergovernmental organizations or groups that are primarily made up of member states. One major fallacy about international organizations is that they are merely amalgamations of various state interests. In the 1960s and 1970s, many scholars believed that IOs were just venues where the contradicting, but sometimes intersecting. What has become more evident in recent years, however, is that IOs can take on lives of their own. For example, the IMF was able to promote a particular form of economic orthodoxy that stemmed mainly from the beliefs of its professional economists. IOs can thus become influential as independent organizations. International relations scholars Michael N. Barnett and Martha Finmore listed the following powers of IOs. First is that IOs have the power of classification. Because IOs can invent and apply categories, they create powerful global standards. For example, it is the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, or UNHCR, that defines what a refugee is. And since states are required to accept refugees entering their borders, this power to establish identity has concrete effects. second is that IOs have the power to fix meanings. This is a broader function related to the first. Various terms like security or development need to be well defined. States, organizations, and individuals view IOs as legitimate sources of information. As such, the meanings they create have effects on various policies. For example, recently, the United Nations has started to define security as not just safety from military violence but also safety from environmental harm. Finally, IOs have the power to diffuse norms. Norms are accepted codes of conduct that may not be strict law, but nevertheless produce regularity in behavior. IOs do not only classify and fix meanings, they also spread their ideas across the world, thereby establishing global standards. Their members are, as Barnett and Finmore emphasized, the missionaries of our time. Their power to diffuse norms stems from the fact that IOs are staffed with independent bureaucracies who are considered experts in various fields. For example, World Bank economists come to be regarded as experts in development and thus carry some form of authority. They can therefore create norms regarding the implementation and conceptualization of development products.
So hello everyone, my name is Shara Claire P. Albert. Our topic for today it's about the United Nations. So after the collapse of the League of Nations, at the end of the World War II, countries that worried about the other global war began to push for formations of more lasting international league. So the result was the creation of the UN. So although the organization is far from perfect, it should be emphasized that it has so far achieved its primary goal of averting another global war. So so kani siya nga topic, it's about the United Nations. So after kuno na collapse ang League of Nations at the end of the World War II, no, ang countries kuno kay worried sila about unsay kanang mapanghitabo kanang ug magsugod na ang global war. So they began to push the formation of a more lasting international league. So ang resulta kay was the creation of the UN. So although kanang ang mga organizations is layo ra is perfect jud cases, no. So dapat emphasize jud siya and dapat ma-achieve ang ilang primary goal of averting another global war. So for this reason, the UN should be considered a success. So there are 5 actions organs. So the first one is the General Assembly or GA. So UN main deliberative, policy making, and representative organ. So according to the UN chapter, decision on important questions such those on peace and security, admissions of new members, and budgetary matters. So require of 2/3 majority of the General Assembly. Annually, the General Assembly elects a GA or the General Assembly. President President serve as a 1-year term of office. So mo na siya ang una nga organs, no, so which is the General Assembly. So number 2, the Security Council or SC, considered to be the most powerful. According to the UN, this body consists of 15 member states. The GA or the General Assembly elects 10 of these 15 to 2-year terms. So the other 5, sometimes referred to a Permanent 5 or P5, are China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. is here to the traditional of great power diplomacy that began with the Metternich or Concert of Europe system. So number 3, the Economic and Social Council or ECOSOC, which is the principal body for coordination, policy review, policy dialogue, and recommendations on social and environmental issues, as well as the implementations of internationally agreed development goals. So, it has 15 members elected for 3 years term. So, kanina yung 5 action organs, no, kanang ni naay 54 ka members nga gi-elect for 3 years terms. So currently, it is the UN Central Platform for discussion on the sustainable development. So mo to no, ang Economic Social Council kay it is the principal body for coordinations, policy review, policy dialogue, and recommendation on social and environmental issues, no, as well as the implementation of internationally agreed development goals. So muna yang so number 4, the International Court of Justice, whose task is to settle in accordance with international law disputes submitted it by states and to dive advisory opinions referred to it by authorized United Nations organs and specialized agencies. So number 5 is Secretariat. Consists of the Secretary General and tens thousands of international UN staff members who carry out the day-to-day work of the UN as mandated by the General Assembly and the organization's other principal organs. So, mo na to ang 5 ka active organs. So, balik ko na to. Number 1, the General Assembly. Number 2, the Security Council. Number 3, Economic and Social Council. And number 4, International Court of Justice. And lastly, the Secretariat. So, let's move on to the challenges of the United Nations. So, however, perhaps the biggest challenges of the United Nations is related to the issues of security. Because of the 5S, so IP5's veto power, so mo to akong gimension above, so it is tough for the Council to release a formal resolution, much more implement. Despite these problems, it remains important for the SC or Security Council to place a high bar on the military intervention. So the UN Security Council has been wrong on issues of intervention, but it has made right decisions.
Okay, let's move on to the last, which is the conclusion. Global governance is such a complex issue that one can actually teach an entire course itself. So, conditional lesson has focused on the ICE and the United Nations. In particular, international organizations are highlighted. Sila may most visible of global governance. The UN in particular is the closest to world government. So, ang UN is pinakadool sa world government. And what is important to remember is that the international institutions like the UN are always in precarious situations. So, UN JDI are always in uncertain position. And on the other hand, they are groups of sovereign states. On the other, they are organizations with their own nationalities and agendas. It is this tension that will continue to inform the evolution of these organizations. However, note that there are many institutions, groups, and ideas hold international and